Hello guys, the nutritional video as promised. I ended up deleting the first one that I did just because it was so damn long. I didn't think I can hold you guys there for that long, and I didn't want to hold you there for that long. So a lot of information to try to digest, and I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. Okay, so here we go. I'm sure you've all heard of the many nutrition plans out there. I hate using the word diet, so I'm going to try to not to use the word diet as much as possible. You have the Atkins, the paleo, if it fits your macros, carb loading, ketosis, etc., etc., etc. They all have strong potentials to work. It's just, are you going to work for the diet? Or for the nutrition plan is basically what it boils down to. It all boils down to discipline, what you're willing and able to do, honestly able and willing to do. And I'll make some videos down the road because I've tried them all and explain to you which diet I think our nutrition plan would best fit your workout regime and just your discipline, your overall discipline and lifestyle. It basically has to do with what you're willing to do and what you're willing not to, or you're not willing to do. Is basically to put that in perspective. The one that will work for you is the one that you can actually stick to consistently. I'm going to say that a million times, that the only magic pill in this business or in this world is consistency when it comes to nutrition and fitness. The one your level of personal discipline will allow you to adhere to is the one that's going to work for you. Stay away from all these fad diets. Nutrition plans work kind of like, your body works like a pendulum. Think of it as a pendulum. I'm a little puppet boy. Okay, the harder you push your body in one direction, it's going to push right back tenfold. Okay, that's why when you watch shows like The Biggest Loser, where they put them in like ketosis right out of the gate, and I'll explain that in other videos on what exactly ketosis is. Exactly, they lose all this weight really, really, really fast, and everybody's really impressed. But what happens? The show ends. Now they don't have a coach screaming in the ear. They don't have anybody doing their nutrition plans for them. They don't have the discipline that they had because they had somebody constantly telling them what to do, and they don't have that money motivating them anymore. So what happens? They go from pushing real hard in this direction. Now they swing right on back. They put all that fat back on within a month to 2 months. It is possible. You can see that bodybuilding shows all the time where I see guys compete with me. We're down to 3-4% body fat, and I see them 3 weeks later and they're back up almost 20-25%. I'm guilty. I've done it. I know what I'm talking about on that one. Before any of these nutrition plans can work for you, you have to understand the basics. And when you talk to PhDs, I read like 9 nutrition books, and one thing I hate about them all is that it almost seems like when I'm reading books written by PhDs, they just are very impressed with how smart they are, and they're smart people. They just don't know how to relate it to simpletons like myself. I consider myself a simpleton. I don't think I'm smart at all, but I guess my wife does, so I should marry me. Awesome. So let's get down to the basics. Okay, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. This is the way I interpret it. It's almost like reading the Bible. This is the way nutrition books speak to me. This is the way that I understand them, and the way I perceive them. I use analogies and all sorts of stuff to try to help explain it to myself and to people, which most of the time works. Let's go over your macronutrients. Okay, macronutrients are considered energy nutrients. They contain stored energy. Just keep it simple. They are required by the body in large amounts. That's what a macronutrient is. Macro, large amounts. Okay. They include your carbohydrates, your lipids, which are fats. Don't let the verbiage confuse you. Protein and water. Okay. Your micronutrients are your vitamins and your minerals. They're only required in trace amounts, and they are paramount for energy metabolism. Your body cannot sustain life without your micronutrients. Remember how we talked about in a previous video about homeostasis, which is anatomical and physiological harmony within your body, if you want to think about it like that. Your body wants to reach that state. It will rob Peter to pay Paul. Your body will eat itself to nourish itself, if that makes sense. It's almost like a cannibal. It would devour bone, muscle, tissue, fat, anything it can to reach homeostasis. It wants to be in that perfect harmonic state. Okay, always remember that. A calorie. Let's go over something simple. A calorie, a kilocalorie. What is that? That's basically the quantified energy of food. That's exactly what a calorie or a kilocalorie is. Okay. Let's start off with protein. Protein is they supply the building blocks of life called amino acids. Okay, the primary function of a protein is to build and to repair. It does have a plethora of other, I went Mexican there, sorry, of other functions within the body, almost millions of other functions within the body. But we're going to keep this video extremely simple. I don't want to confuse you. I don't have a PhD, so I'm not trying to pat myself on the back of how smart I am. I'm just trying to show you how to understand and comprehend the way that I do, because I try to break things down almost in elementary and rudimentary level. Okay. Um, they're derived from animal foods such as chicken, turkey, meats, fish, and all dairy products are considered complete sources of protein. That's why they're called a complete protein. Non-animal dairy proteins are labeled incomplete. Non-animal or dairy are non-dairy products. I'm sorry, non-animal or non-dairy products are labeled as incomplete proteins because they lack one or more of the essential amino acids. So you'll hear that verbiage used a lot: complete protein and incomplete protein. Now you know what it is. Okay. Um, 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories, 4 kilocalories. And the body will only access, of all the protein that you ingest in a sitting, the body will only access about 80% to use as needed. Because you got to remember that the body costs energy, or it takes energy to make energy within the body. About 80% of those protein calories will actually be utilized. So just think of it 80 out of 100 if you want to simplify it. 80 out of 100 would be utilized as some kind of fuel source for some kind of metabolic process. Let's go over lipids and fats. Okay, the function is of a fat is to provide protection for the organs and to insulate the body and fuel the body even. We'll get into that later. That one's actually a pretty cool one. They got a bad rap, but they really shouldn't. There's 2 types of dietary fat. Saturated fat, which is solid at room temperature and mainly derived from animal food sources. This is the bad one. Okay, eating in excess. This is the one that can cause scarring within the arteries and cardiovascular system. This is one that doctors always tell you to kind of keep it on the low for that one. And then you have unsaturated fat, which is typically liquid at room temperature. It tends to harden when it's chilled. Derived from fish nuts and certain oils. This is your good guys. Okay, we can break it down and get into omega-3s, omega-6, all that fun stuff, guys, but I'm trying to keep it very, very simple. And actually, I'll get in more to that when I get into the ketosis video anyways. Now, fats, the reason they got their bad rap back in the day is because fats are extremely calorie dense, okay? 1 gram of fat yields 9 calories per 1 gram. Another thing is that the body will access about 97% of ingested fats. It's the most efficient fuel as far as if you're looking at it as takes energy to make energy. The fat is the most efficient. That's why a lot of hikers and guys who go up in the mountains, especially when I was in Ranger Bat, they always said when we were in Afghanistan at 14,700 feet to make sure that we have our fats, get our fats, because it takes less energy for the body to utilize that energy. It's exactly why. It just takes less for the body to turn into a fuel. All right. Now the nitty gritty, okay? Carbohydrates. It's the main source of energy for the body, okay? They're basically the sugars, the starches, and fibers found in fruits, grains, vegetables, and milk products, okay? There's 2 types of carbohydrates. There's simple and complex carbohydrates. No matter whether they're simple or they're complex carbohydrates, they all get digested and absorbed into the bloodstream as a simple sugar called glucose. All right, basically, like protein has the amino acids, carbohydrates have glucose. You get broken down. That's how they get utilized as a fuel, simple fuel. In non-starvation circumstances, glucose is the main fuel for the brain. Okay, glucose is stored in the muscles and in the liver in little storage tanks called glycogen. Okay, you'll hear that word thrown a lot in the fitness industry: glycogen, muscle glycogen, liver glycogen. All right, muscle glycogen and liver glycogen, when these tanks are full due to overconsumption of glucose, can be stored within fat cells. Actually glucose. So when muscle glycogen and liver glycogen are full of glucose to capacity, you can actually have what's called a spillover effect, and it can actually be stored in the fat cells. And I'll get more into that here in a bit. The body gains access to up to 90% of the carb calories. So if you had 100, you're going to look at your body will actually utilize 90%. It's not as efficient as fats, and it's more efficient than protein as far as the takes energy to create energy deal. Let me see. Simple and complex Carbohydrates, the term simple and complex, that just refers to how fast the how fast the blood sugar, or sorry, how fast the sugar gets into the bloodstream. That's basically all it is. Simple carbohydrate is basically a monosaccharide, which means it gets broken down really fast and enters the bloodstream extremely fast. Okay. Complex carbohydrate means it's a polychain, has a lot of chain links that have to get broken down into disaccharides, which are just two. Those have to get broken down into monosaccharides, and that's how they get into the bloodstream. So it's just a longer process of breaking that stuff down to enter the bloodstream. So that's the difference between your simple and your complex carbohydrates. Okay. Whenever I talk to people, and I always ask them, especially nurses and firefighters, I love this because I always get the exact same answer. I always ask them, hey, in bodybuilding, when I'm trying to transform my body, when I'm trying to burn body fat and build muscle at the exact same time, what are the two hormones that are paramount, that are the most critical, that I'm trying to manipulate through the whole process of my nutrition plan? And they always say the same thing. They always say testosterone and cortisol, which cortisol is the antagonist to testosterone, and those are good answers. But I have no control over that stuff. That's something that my body does. That my pituitary gland's in charge of all that stuff. I have no control over that. The two that I'm most concerned with are released from the pancreas. They're called glucagon and insulin. Those I do have control over, and I control those through my consumption of carbohydrates. Okay, that's how they're utilized in nutrition plans, the carbohydrates. Okay, that's why you'll hear all about that stuff here in a bit. Like I said, they're released by the pancreas, and their sole purpose, not sole purpose, they have multi-purpose, but one of their primary purposes is to regulate blood sugar levels. Okay, everybody here in South Texas, we all know what a diabetic is, or you more than likely have someone in your family that's diabetic. That'd be good homework for you to look up insulin resistance and insulin sensitivities, diabetes, type 1, type 2 diabetics, all that fun stuff. That'd be really good homework for you. That's why I always tell nurses and firefighters is that you know this stuff, you just don't know you know it until you start actually breaking this stuff down and simplifying it. Because a lot of that, the nurse gig and a lot of the firefighter paramedic gig is just memorizing a bunch of stuff. To be honest with you, we all have protocols, but you got to kind of sit down and really get the wheels turning on it to really fully understand it. So to simplify, think of insulin as your sugar storing hormone, and think of glucagon as your sugar releasing hormone. Remember, your body wants to be in homeostasis. Okay, just always remember that when your blood sugar is elevated, your pancreas releases insulin to take sugar out of the bloodstream. Just imagine what happens to Kool-Aid when you have too much sugar in it. It thickens up, it makes a syrup. Well, the exact same thing is happening to your blood. Your heart's trying to pump all that thick blood because it's sugary. It's a whole lot of sugar in there, and it starts causing all sorts of complications. Now, if you're diabetic, this is a whole other story. Okay, we'll get into that too. I can make a video about that. No big deal. So how do we get blood out of the bloodstream, or how do we get that thick syrup to a better viscosity, if you will, is to get insulin into the equation to take muscle out of the bloodstream and put it into the cells. So when that blood sugar is elevated, that blood sugar is high inside the cardiovascular system, inside the bloodstream, that sugar's got to go somewhere. So insulin goes, takes that freaking sugar and says, hey man, follow me. Just think of insulin as a key. It's a key to the club, and the door for insulin only opens inward. So where it's going to take that sugar, it's going to take it to your muscle and your liver glycogen stores. And if you ingest if you over ingest on carbohydrates and your liver and your glycogen stores are full, it will spill over and it'll convert and do all sorts of other crazy stuff, but it will convert and get stored into your fat cells. Basically, yeah, because it will store them up to capacity. They say that any human only needs about 100 grams of sugar or glucose a day for metabolic function, to feed the brain, to feed the body, all that fun stuff. If you start tracking, you'll be amazed at how much sugar that you ingest. Just think one soda is like 64 grams of sugar, something like that. Okay. Now, if you want to think about the way you think about liver glycogen and muscle glycogen and fat cells, I like to use this analogy. Imagine like all three of them are clubs. Okay. Your liver glycogen is an extremely exclusive high roller club. Okay, it only allows very, very certain people to get in there, and it wants to keep those people there because they want to keep spending money and all that fun stuff. Okay, Your muscle glycogen stores, those are kind of a little higher end and kind of pricey. Those are more like your blue collar guys that have good solid jobs, able to afford that $6 beer. Your liver glycogen cells or stores are white collar, obviously white collar. Um, so you got your white collar, your blue collar. Now think of your fat cells. Your fat cells are like a big warehouse club where you have dollar beer night. Hey, maximum capacity, everybody's welcome. We don't care. We're going to stuff this thing as much as we possibly can because fat cells can expand a lot bigger than your glycogen stores and your liver glycogen stores. That's why the potential to gain fat is almost unfathomable. That's why we run into people that weigh 600, 700 pounds on the ambulance all the time. Um, so what you think of them like that, keep it simple. The amount of insulin released by the pancreas is directly related to the amount of sugar in the blood. So the faster it enters the bloodstream, the more insulin is released and the higher the potential for glucose to be stored as fat. Always remember that. So the higher your carbohydrate intake, the higher the potential to be stored as fat. Okay, and you can use that to your advantage. That little bit of knowledge, you can use that to your advantage. And I'm going to show you in other videos how to use that to your advantage, how I utilize that to my advantage. Okay, now we talked about insulin. Let's brush up on glucagon. Glucagon is the antagonist to insulin. When blood sugar is too low, the pancreas releases glucagon to go open those cell doors and let the glucose out and into the bloodstream. Glucose is another key. So insulin is the key that opens the door to swing in. Glucagon, sorry, that was glucose. Insulin key, open in. Glucagon key, open out. Basically think of glucagon as it's 2 a.m. That's the cop that's on duty, off duty, making his $50 an hour. Bastard. Just kidding. I love cops. Love my boys in blue. He's that guy kicking everybody out the club. He says, "Hey man, party's over. Get out the club. Get out of here." He's gonna release all that stored glycogen to get that into the bloodstream as fast as possible to reach homeostasis. Your blood sugar wants to be at around 80 to 120, I believe it's millimeters of mercury. I gotta brush up on that stuff. Sorry. When blood sugar is low and glucose is absent, the body can convert other macronutrients or other molecules into a glucose molecule, and that's a process known as gluconeogenesis. We utilize that one to our advantage, like in a ketosis-based metabolism or a ketosis-based diet, nutrition plan. I utilize that right now. That's the one I'm currently utilizing, and I'll be making video about that for sure. So when we get my wife utilizing as well. Okay, so the regular diet with carbs included is basically what you're doing right now. Probably is basically known as glycolysis. Your basic, if I even heard the word, which I'm not even sure if it is a word, is glycolytic-based metabolism. I actually got to look that one up because that sounds a little far-fetched to me. I just kind of hear that a lot in the gym. I just know it as glycolysis, your basic glycolysis. Okay. Diet low or absent in carbohydrate where fat is utilized as the primary fuel is known as ketosis. That'd be good homework for you guys. I can answer your questions about that one for sure. And because I know I'm going to get asked, alcohol. Alcohol is 7 calories per 1 gram. I do drink alcohol even when I diet. Just because I'm a whiskey drinker and a scotch drinker, and I have a job where I deal with carcinogens, and I try not to, since I don't do fruit while I'm on this particular nutrition plan that I'm on right now, I got to get those antioxidant properties from somewhere. So there we go. I do indulge every now and then. Water is going to be another video I'm going to make, the importance of water, because I can't stress that one enough, guys. You don't need to be chugging a gallon at a time. The trick is to just sip on water all day long. Your body regulates itself, and I'm going to repeat this in another video. Your body regulates itself with every 5 to 15 minutes. So if you're not drinking water, it actually has an inverse effect, and you'll actually retain water. So you people who hang out in the sauna that think you're doing yourselves good by losing water weight, you're actually going to put on more water weight because your body releases cool hormones like testosterone and antidiuretic hormone. Other homework you can look up if you want, ask questions about. One of the ones I'd like you guys to do some homework on to really understand that, if you want to make sense of the carbohydrates and what you're eating, what you're ingesting in your body, look up glycemic index. Okay, there are some cool apps on your phone that'll have glycemic index apps, counters, like glycemic index counters, reference points. You can even use calorie trackers, all that fun stuff. I'm going to explain how all this stuff can be utilized in nutrition plans, which I'm kind of on the fence about giving away my formulas because it took me 3 years to come up with them. And that's kind of my intellectual property. I might share it with you. I might not. I'm sorry. I got to feed my family somehow. Um, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you guys, what really opened or connected all the bridges for me, was one book. I said I read 9 nutrition books. I read one about 9. I want to say somewhere between 7 and 9. I read one nutrition, which really, honestly, and to go off on a tangent, really kind of opened my eyes that nobody has this figured out. Everybody just kind of has ideas because all those books were written by PhDs, and all of them had conflicting information. So it's just calculated guessing. Which, hey, it works. I'm not gonna lie, it works. They're smart people, but that's the way that it's like reading the Bible. That's the way that they interpret nutrition, the way that they interpret everything, and that's the way they wrote it down. And of course, they want to make some money, so they're gonna sell a book. I would too. If I was smart enough, I would definitely do it. Um, Look up glycemic index, but the most important thing I can tell you, the book that really kind of connected all the bridges for me was a book called Fat Chance, and it was written by Robert H. Lustig. He's an MD. It's not even written on the premise or on the guise of being a nutritional book. Actually, it's kind of a book talking crap about sugar. It talks about the sugar epidemic in America and all over the Western world. But there's a solid, probably the best A&P section, anatomy and physiology section, that would help just explain all this stuff and even dumb it down to an even more elementary and rudimentary level if you need be. Um, I really can't stress enough how much I love that book, especially firefighters and nurses. If you get a chance to read it, read it. It will connect so many bridges for you. It will give you a really, really great comprehension of how diabetes happens and what it does to the body. It's actually pretty cool information. I found it really hard. I think I read it in like 2 days. I found it really hard to put down. It's just a really good book. I actually had a nurse friend of mine who's been asking me for nutrition information, tell me about how he can't put it down. He loves it. It's just a great book. It almost makes you feel like you're poisoning yourself, which it helps you to keep on your nutrition plan a little bit easier. Well, guys, I wanted to keep it short. This was just a very condensed version of a very wide scope of stuff. Okay, I try to put it in the most simple terms to for you to utilize, and I'll explain to you how to take advantage of this information. But you have to grasp this information. This is the very basics that you got to just kind of wrap your head around, and research and research and research. If you get stumped on any of the research, hit me up. I'll answer any of your questions if I can. Like, I'm not the smartest book on the shelf, but I'm definitely a book. Um, but I will show you how to utilize this to your advantage in a nutrition plan. Say bye-bye to this, by the way, because I'm so annoyed by it. I'm so ready to shave it. I know it looks sexy and cool, and you guys seem to love it because the most comments I get instead of questions are about my mustache. But definitely hit me up, okay? You guys take care.